Welcome back to today's Love Transformation class. Now, if you're anything like me, your relationship history has been nothing short of a really bumpy road, painful, like an emotional roller coaster. And today's guest is someone who I've often referred to as the one that I would love to sit down and really nut out my love life with. And so I'm so glad she's been able to join us today. We're going to talk about some really juicy stuff, including love addiction, painful patterns, and how to move through it to create healthy love. Welcome, Darcy.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here again. I love this event so much, and I'm always so happy to see you because you're so amazing. I just adore you.
There is a lot of painful patterns that we have around our relationship history. Where do we even start?
Oh my gosh. And, being a love coach who struggled so much for so long. And I think the hardest part was struggling for so long and not knowing what was going on. I mean, starting to struggle at like age 14 and not knowing what was really going on with me until maybe age 30. My gosh, made this struggle so hard and so long. That's why I think these events are amazing for women, because they get to put a name to what's going on and understand, like, okay, so there's actual strategic steps that I can take and mindset practices I can use to come to the other side and get healing and meet my partner and experience true love, right?
One of the things I think that's most difficult for us when our love life's not going the way that we want it to is to actually stop and say, wait, I'm actually the common denominator there. Because I think before that we have a tendency to just blame it on bad choices in men often, or unfortunate, unlucky circumstances. What happens then when we start to actually reflect, maybe it's something that I can change in myself?
Well, I know for me, for such a long time growing up, getting the love that I wanted was such an inconsistent process. And so I know that when I grew up and I felt the first feelings of romantic love from a man, and feeling the way that it felt to have a man focused on me and loving me, like it felt like the one thing that I'd wanted my whole life was finally there. And when it went away, felt like the worst pain ever, like finally having that just like one beautiful thing that I'd longed for so long, and then to have it like yanked away was like the worst experience ever, and I quickly became totally and completely like obsessed, literally, with achieving that same experience as much as I possibly could, to the detriment of my health and my emotional well-being.
And I can completely relate. The intensity of that experience is way more than just the connection that we have with that person, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, everybody kind of has their own story, but for me, I mean, I had good parents. I mean, they didn't hit me, they didn't do anything like that, but my parents got a divorce, and my mom went to work full time as a single parent. My dad, he eventually actually moved away, married my stepmother. They cared about me, but their caregiving was so inconsistent that love felt so inconsistent. And as a child, a small child, I felt like it was my fault that it went away. And I felt like it was something that I did wrong. Like I wasn't lovable enough, or I wasn't caring enough, or I wasn't genuine enough. And I just remember, like, as a small kid, I was actually talking about this on a Facebook Live. I remember as a small kid, I had like all these stuffed animals, and I had like a cat, and I just wanted to like take care of these like stuffed animals and my cat, and like make them feel so loved and so cared for, so that they could like have the feelings that I wanted that I didn't have, and it created this like feeling of like emptiness inside of me, this like, I mean, emptiness really is the best way to describe it. And it didn't go away for a long time. It didn't go away until I met my first boyfriend. And so I just thought that was kind of how most people felt. I just felt like most people, you know, went through their lives like not feeling very complete and not feeling very whole. And so for me, going through a process of having this obsession of wanting a partner to make me feel alive and wanting a partner to make me feel good, I was willing to do anything that I had to do to have that experience, right? And when you add that on top of having the anxious attachment style that comes from inconsistent caregiving like that, many times it explodes. I mean, many times it's a super unhealthy combination that leaves women feeling completely out of control around their love life and making choices that they wouldn't otherwise make. I mean, we're talking about successful women, women with amazing jobs, women with amazing homes that are making choices that they're ashamed of. You know, women who are listening on this call who are in shame around their romantic choices and not understanding why they're making the decisions they're making. And there's a very reasonable answer behind their decision making, right?
For the singles that are watching, aside from their relationship experiences, are there any other telltale signs? So you mentioned earlier on, you noticed that you were not feeling completely fulfilled. Your love cup wasn't full. You were looking for love from outside. How would a single that's watching this know if that was them? Are there any other telltale signs of the way that we're doing life that indicate that we are looking for love from the outside, or is it just we'll notice the symptoms when we actually start dating or we're in a relationship?
Yeah, actually, the interesting thing, that's such a good question, is that most women who have these issues like love addiction type stuff, when they're single, they're actually doing great. When they're single, like life is going awesome. They're actually working out, they're taking care of their bodies, they're getting together with friends, they're doing great at work, like they're doing awesome. Those women shine when they're single. So that's why it feels so confusing to most of these women, because it's when they actually attract the guy and they get into the relationship, that's when all their issues kick in. The anxiety, the obsession, the self-neglect, the withdrawal from interest, hobbies, you know, the shame, the guilt, like the things like that actually start to kick in once the guy actually shows up. Because love addiction, these women go through a process of abandoning themselves once the guy actually gets here. In the beginning, when the guy shows up, so yes, to answer your question, those are some of the signs. But again, they're not going to see them most of the time when they're single. When they're single, they're going to be doing great. I mean, they will have a little bit of romantic fantasy when they're single, like, you know, oh, when I start dating again, I'm going to do it different this time. I'm going to meet a really great man. He's going to be like awesome. Like, I'm going to take care of myself this time. It's going to be, you know, better than I ever could have imagined. And then they end up with a guy who once again is avoidant, and all their pain comes to the surface. But again, there's going to be that really electric like chemistry in the beginning of the partnership where the love addict feels good. The love addict is like getting all the attention, all the caring, all the love that she's been wanting. And so she's going to feel great. And then the avoidant is going to be feeling really complete and suffocated and engulfed. And it's going to be like, I am not really wanting this. And it's going to pull away. And that's when the love addict starts to feel really freaked out, really scared. And that's when she stops showing up to work with like fully put together, and stops, you know, ignoring friends' phone calls, and starts to drink more wine than normal, and, you know, really starts to abandon herself. And so not only is her relationship suffering and having extreme problems, but now she is not taking care of herself and showing up for herself. And she starts to experience a lot of shame and guilt because she's like, well, here I am again. I thought it was going to be different this time, and it's not. It's the same, right? So that's kind of a little bit about what it looks like.
I think many of us can relate to feeling like a complete hot mess over a connection with a man. And yet our conscious mind is like, he doesn't even deserve for me to feel this way. Look at the way he's treating me. And yet it is like an addiction, isn't it? Let's dive a little bit deeper into, so you mentioned inconsistent parenting, some of the I guess the underlying causes for where this love addiction is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, parenting has a big effect around a child growing up to be like a female love addict, right? And so, that's one of the biggest effects for sure. I mean, you could look at like the medical piece around addiction. I mean, addiction does have its ties to genetics, right? And so, if there's alcoholism, workaholism, drug addiction, alcoholism, then there is going to be like a higher like potential for love addiction, codependency, love avoidance, those kind of issues, right? But love addiction really is greatly affected by how the child is actually raised by the parents. So, and it really is from neglect or from inconsistent parenting. And it's really, really painful.
How does love addiction differ from codependency?
Yeah, so codependency can be with anybody. So codependency can be like, if I'm codependent, I can be codependent with my boss, I can be codependent with my child, I can be codependent with, a friend or whatever. Love addiction is usually only with a partner. I mean, I guess you could be like love addicted in some cases to like, a friend or whatever. But when we're looking at love addiction, normally we're looking at a romantic relationship. And, codependency is more about, I would say, so like love addiction is more about the way that you feel about somebody and like the romantic fantasy and the unrealistic expectations and the abandonment of yourself in the partnership. And codependency is a little bit different of an animal, just in the sense of like, codependency is really being fixated on like, do you feel like you're good enough in that relationship with that person? Like, can you make them better? Can you caretake them? Like that kind of stuff. And it's not about like anxiety and obsession and all that stuff that love addiction is. So it's different, but it's also different in the sense that love addiction is about me and my romantic partner, and codependency can be with anybody.
One of the things I think as a love addict, we don't really have any difficulty, like you said, really feeling into the fantasy of that dream relationship, really conjuring up what that might be like. But you mentioned also unrealistic. So how do we know then that if this fantasy, this vision, this ideal dream relationship that we have is unrealistic or not?
Yeah, well, one of the, there's a couple of different 12-step programs that work really well for love addicts. And one of the tools that, I've taken for one of those 12-step programs and, used to help my clients is what's called a dating plan. And a dating plan is basically a plan that's set up for you to help you date in a healthy way. And it really helps you break down the ways that you create unrealistic expectations and the ways that you create fantasies around partners. And then it's drawn out in a specific way to make sure that you date in a slow enough, graduated process so that you're not taking a fantasy, shoving it over somebody's face and making that person into who you want them to be rather than who they really are. Because love addicts will go on a first date that's like 7 hours long and make out with that person like 5 hours out of 7 hours. And then like the next date, they're married to them basically. And a dating plan makes you take a major step back and go on like 1 hour coffee date for the first date, right? And the second date, like 1 hour coffee date. Third date, like go out for a 2 hour dinner, like really slow it down, maybe not kiss the person until the fourth date, like just really slow your roll. So you're actually having to learn about the person in front of you, right? Instead of having all this oxytocin and hormones released in your body. So you're like, he's the one, he's everything I've always wanted, right? When you don't really know him very well. And it's hard for love addicts to do this because what we're seeking is the emotions that the love releases, the affection with the guy releases, because it helps us feel alive in our lives, right? Because the love addict who's single and is taking care of herself, she loves it, but she feels a little bit empty inside without that love connection. So she's seeking that intensity. So for her to have to really take a step back and not get mangled up into that intensity and have to really slow down and get to know the guy is difficult, because it's about true intimacy. It's about truly getting to know who the person is in front of you rather than who you want them to be, and doing it in a way that's meant to protect your heart and keep you safe, right? Because when you're dating, you have to have an open heart. Otherwise, dating doesn't work. But for love addicts, we have to have an open heart, and we also have to make sure that we're safe so that we don't dive right in with somebody that we just don't know. So that's one of my favorite things that's really effective for love addicts, is using a dating plan that is structured in a way to help you move forward, get to know a man, start dating, and yet be safe and be cared for.
Do you think that those hedonistic, really powerful feelings that the love addict has, are they always a bad sign? Or I guess what I'm asking is, going through a structured, slow, incremental dating plan, does that mean not ever experiencing those huge initial highs that you have with someone?
Yeah, so I'm not one of those people who thinks that chemistry is a bad thing. Like, I think having compatibility and chemistry is a great thing. I think if you have both, that's awesome. I do know that, yes, you can build chemistry. I mean, for sure, that can happen. I dated a guy like in my younger years that I built chemistry with, and it was great. But I like chemistry. Chemistry is awesome. So I think that you can have both pieces. But the problem is that when love addicts don't have any kind of structure in place, they feel chemistry and they're like ready to go. They're like, let's do this. We have chemistry. Let's get married. Let's have a baby. So it's good, especially if there's chemistry, to just move a little slower, right? It's not about having a bunch of rules. It's just about moving a little bit slower, right? To make sure that you're still showing up for yourself, showing up for your responsibilities, making sure that your life still feels really good and safe and full. So no, those feelings are not bad. And as a matter of fact, I think for love addicts who want to have both, who want to have chemistry and compatibility, I think something like a dating plan is even better for them, because it allows them to get to experience those intense, chemistry feelings, and also feel like they're going to be okay, and also feel like they can make it through and still show up for themselves and create a great epic partnership, because they're slowing it down a little bit, right?
I noticed that many of the women that joined the Facebook group for this event indicated that they had anxious attachment, but they also indicated that they weren't dating right now. And I'm wondering if that's a bit of a phenomena for perhaps a more experienced person in relationships that has anxious attachment, that they almost just sideline themselves because they know when they do life on their own, they're pretty well in control, they're showing up for themselves, and they don't trust themselves anymore. What advice do you have for those women watching?
Yes, so that is a super common thing. So women with anxious attachment style and women even with love addiction, what happens is that because they lose themselves so much, and because they choose a partner that they have a fantasy around, not that is really who they thought he was, at the end of the relationship, they feel like they've lost two people. They feel like they lost who they were, and they feel like they lost who he was. And it's very disheartening and it's very painful. And so they're like, okay, I need to take a break. I'm going to put the apps down. I'm not going to go out. I'm just going to get back to me, and I'm going to focus on that. And so it's so common, and it doesn't have to be that way. There are things that exist that can help you, that can support you in being able to date and be excited about the guy you're dating, and have a great dating experience that will help you not lose yourself, and that will help you, still feel like you're caring for you, still feel like you're connecting with your community, still feel like you're showing up at work, and still getting to date a really amazing guy. And I know it sounds like such a fairy tale, like, oh, you can do it all with the anxious attachment style. But dealing with an anxious attachment style, like so much of it really is making sure that you are prioritizing your relationship with you. Because when that anxiety kicks in, man, all you want to do is stare at your phone. I mean, seriously, it like takes you back to like age 5. And you don't want to be 41 anymore. You just want to be on your phone, waiting for the text, making sure he's still showing up, he's not abandoning you. And you not abandoning you and you prioritizing you consistently starts to become a pattern. It starts to become a ritual. You start to become grounded into it. And it becomes such a powerful habit that eventually you will never, ever, ever stop doing it. Your relationship with you will become the most important relationship. But it doesn't feel that way. It feels like, he's the center of your world, right? So yes, there are a ton of skills, there are a ton of tools, there's so much help available. And, I really do encourage women who think they have the possibility of love addiction to get a coach, get a therapist, do the work so that you can have the love of your life. And you can also feel secure, and you don't have to feel like you're, wavering or unstable or any of that, because you can have it all. You really can. It's not a punishment, I promise. It's a unique trait that you carry, and there's answers, there's solutions for it, and you get to have it all, just like anybody else.
Are there any particular do's or don'ts or tips or advice that you've noticed apply specifically to someone with love addiction in the dating process?
Yeah, so I would recommend somebody who is like never heard of love addiction until this moment and is like, I don't know what that is. It sounds like what I have. I always recommend people pick up the book Facing Love Addiction by Pia Melody. It's an amazing book. It's so helpful. It talks about, love addiction. It explains what it is. It explains like some really powerful tools in there for, these women to start implementing in their life. I recommend that you also come up with like one thing a day that you can do that's a commitment to yourself that you're not going to abandon no matter what. And I don't care, you can take your phone with the guy, right? And you can like go carry your phone while you do it. I don't really care if you're like obsessing about the guy, that's fine. But like one thing that you're going to do every day that you're not going to abandon no matter what, whether it's like EFT tapping or a meditation, or, you're going to do like hypnosis or whatever you're going to do, just one thing every single day that you're going to commit to doing no matter what. And if you fall off, get right back on it and just stay consistent, showing up for yourself. And then one other thing that I recommend is decide how old you feel when you're kind of obsessing and really getting kind of like caught up when a guy doesn't reach out or something like that. And then find some coping mechanism, a soothing mechanism that you can do for that child. Like for me, mine was a 6-year-old, and my 6-year-old loved stuffed animals and cats, right? We already had a cat. So I got a stuffed animal, and I would use that stuffed animal in like inner child work for myself. So of course I was a therapist at the time, so I knew how to do inner child work. So I'm not telling anybody on here how to do inner child work, but just find something that is soothing to that age that you were. And when you start to get triggered, when you don't hear from him, just grab whatever it is and self-soothe with that thing. So those 3 things starting off will help bring a little bit more serenity. So commit to doing whatever the one thing is that helps you feel loved and cared for a day. Do it every day, no matter what, even if your phone's with you. Do the one thing for your inner child whenever you need it that's self-soothing, and get the book Facing Love Addiction by PM Melody. Those would be the three things I would start with.
Because as love addicts, we often tend to really focus in on one person. They become the object of our affection and our attention. What are your thoughts about this idea of circular dating or multiple dating? Is that really an antidote for a love addict?
Yeah, I mean, rotational dating, I think, can be helpful for love addicts in the sense that, you know, it doesn't allow them to like focus on one guy at one time. The only problem I found in working with love addicts in my coaching practice is they always end up picking one guy out of the whole. Like if they're dating five guys at one time, they're always like, oh, but this one, I want this one to call. So they always end up finding one out of the however many that they're attached to anyway. So ultimately, I think what's super helpful is doing like some kind of law of attraction work and learning how to practice taking your focus off the guy, period, right? So like, and again, when your anxiety, when your amygdala is like, we're not safe, it's like super hard to do this. But it in the end, it really is about continuing to take your focus off of him, off of him, off of him. Even if you have to do it 1,000 times in 1 minute, that's what the work is really about. It's about taking your focus off of him and putting it back on you. What do I think right now? What do I want right now? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I thirsty? Do I need to work out? Like, what do I need? And rotational dating, again, is great. But with love addicts, they typically will meet a guy who will trigger a certain part of them, and then they'll get more activated around him. So I work with my clients on focusing techniques and how to take the focus off the man and be focused on them.
Do you have guidelines for your clients around intimacy? Because I know with love addicts, we can tend to fall really hard, really fast, really early, and intimacy can just complicate things or almost have us locked in to that person. What is your advice on that?
Yeah, so I try not to like set parameters for women. I try, you know, most of the women who hire me are 25 years old and up. So I try to, you know, allow them to kind of figure out what works for them and what doesn't. But there is truth to the fact that, I mean, I've watched women in my practice have sex with guys early on and get overly attached. And I've watched women wait and kind of do better as far as love addiction goes. But honestly, there's still just this activation piece that happens between love addicts and avoidance that my clients don't even need to have sex with the avoidant to get super activated around him. So it really is about, you know, them making the decision. It's more about what do I need in order to feel safe? It's less about, you know, when is the right time for me to have sex, then what do I need to actually feel safe around sex? And there are a lot of women I work with who are like, I really don't want to be sexual until I'm in a committed relationship, right? Not the whole marriage thing, but like, I want to be in a committed partnership. I want to know that we're not sleeping with other people, you know, or like, what do I need to know about him in order to be sexual with him? Well, I want to know what his dreams are. I want to know what makes him happy. I want to know what he thinks about women's rights. I want to know like what his biggest dreams are. You know, sometimes it's just about what do you want to know about him, or what would make you feel safe, or, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, love addicts, they can have a tendency to do better if they kind of hold it off a little bit.
So you have an amazing free gift for the audience today.
I do, yes. So I've included in this my Feminine Essence Masterclass, and it's really about tapping into your feminine energy and being able to attract a masculine man. And being in your feminine energy is really hard for love addicts because we're all the way back here in our amygdala. So we're like, we're scared, you know? So it's good. It's really helpful. I think people will like it.
Do you have any final thoughts for all the audience, especially all of the love addicts that are listening today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would end with is just know there's so much hope out there. I mean, I don't know how many love addicts I've worked with who are in partnership or engaged or married. And, you know, at one point we're like crying on the floor and just feeling like there was no hope. And, just know that it's not this affliction, that there's no solution or anything like that. There's a lot of solution. There's a lot of hope. And there's an amazing man who's already been picked for you, right? He's already like, you guys have like beacons and you're pulling together, and, you're worth having that dream, and you get to have it, right? You just get to do maybe a few things a little differently. And yeah, and it was so much fun being here. So thank you for having me.
So you can check out more about Darcy, her bio, download her free gift and more today. So all below the video. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again for the Love Breakthrough virtual retreat tomorrow.